Joining me now from Boston, Hugh Hewitt. He is the host of the popular conservative radio program, The Hugh Hewitt Show. I am pleased to have him back on this program.
Hey, Charlie, good evening.
What made you so convinced that Cruz would win when the polls showed Donald Trump winning?
There are two answers to that, Charlie. One is radio hosts are frequently wrong but never in doubt, and so we always assert what we believe to be true.
Yes.
But the data point was social media touches, and the social media run by a couple of people, John Drogan and Josh Perry down in Texas, is a super PAC operation that's probably the most sophisticated of any of the Republicans that has been up and running for 2 years with a massive data bank that deployed. I don't know if it scales in New Hampshire, but it certainly worked in Iowa. They knew whom every one of their voters was and where they could be found that day.
So tell me how you see it in New Hampshire.
I think Donald Trump won tomorrow by not losing on Saturday night. I think he's going to win. I think John Kasich is going to come in second for a reason I'll explain in a second. And I think Marco Rubio will be third. My Kasich theory is this. It's my uncle's theory of politics. John Kasich is everybody's favorite uncle, and they're going to vote for him in New Hampshire because they're an independent-minded, fair-minded, Yankee kind of thing. Everyone's got a lawyer uncle. I am that for some of my nephews, who you call when you're in trouble. And we got Christie and we got Cruz. We got a couple of, got a doctor uncle. We got the distant, scary uncle who can get you a job, and that's Donald Trump. And we got the cool uncle who takes you to ball games, and that's Marco Rubio. And then we've got Dad, and that's Jeb Bush. And so nobody votes for Dad yet, but he did release the Kraken over the weekend and bring Barbara Bush into New Hampshire, and so he's surging up there a little bit. But I think it's going to be Trump, Kasich, Rubio, and this overkill on the Rubio repetition has actually rallied some conservatives to his side, as has the Ted Cruz overkill on the Ben Carson story, because there's nothing like the sound of liberal media and Democrats beating up on conservatives to rally people to them. I think Rubio's actually getting a little rebound after the pile-on of the weekend.
Yeah, but the pile-on wasn't from liberal writers. I mean, the pile-on was from everybody. I mean, it was everybody's judgment that, perhaps it was only 3 minutes, as you have suggested, but it seemed to be the topic of conversation because he seemed momentum. And
I'll give you an example. Jennifer Granholm, who is a very smart former governor of Michigan, was on CNN this afternoon, and she brought it up and was joyful with Rubio's decline. She also brought up Ted Cruz's Canada thing, birtherism, from a Harvard law grad who knows better. They're trying to, I think, systematically sow discord, but really take Rubio out and take Ted Cruz out of the picture, so that the Republicans, I think they'd like to run against a very weakened nominee who cannot energize young people against Hillary Clinton.
But so in your judgment, this was a temporary hit that now is rebounding to Marco Rubio's favor.
Yes, and what he did was, famous line in Chris Matthews' book, Hardball, probably the most important line in politics, hang a lantern on your problem. He leaned into his problem all day yesterday and today and explained what he had attempted to explain 3 or 4 times. But the reason I think he kept going back to it was he never completed the second, he got the 90 seconds, and he wanted to say, President Obama has not failed because he's young, so don't hold it against me because I'm young. President Obama has destroyed what conservatives believe is the core of the country's ethos because he's been successful. And he didn't get that out in 90 seconds, so he kept trying to restart it to explain it. And Christie, being the able prosecutor, and I've had him on so many times, kept interrupting the witness. It was terrific theater.
Yeah, but I mean, that what his argument is that Obama wants to change America. He wants to change America with health care, oh my God. He wants to change America with an Iran nuclear negotiation and deal, oh my God. I mean, that's not exactly somehow changing the ethos of America.
Well, the Iran deal, I'll disagree with you on, Charlie. I noted that in the Republican debate, we spent a lot of time talking about North Korea and Libya and problems of the Obama-Clinton-Kerry State Department policy of détente with Islamist end-timers. That doesn't work. It's not like they taunt with the Soviet Union that Nixon arranged. On the other hand, I do think that the Bernie Sanders-Hillary Clinton campaigns back and forth over who's going to burn in hell for not supporting the first woman presidency is not exactly the height of a policy debate. So this is the inversion, and I think you might agree with me. Republicans usually argue over personality and Democrats over policy.
Right.
This is inverted this year, with the exception of the Rock'em Sock'em robots, Jeb Bush and Donald Trump.
So the Rock'em Sock'em robots, why do you think Trump is still winning?
Because he is, New Hampshire is a very independent-minded state. Right. They value that, and he is not anybody's creature.
Let's go back to Kasich for a second. Does anybody have the possibility now, without thinking of any particular scenario, of catching fire?
Yes, John Kasich does, because, again, the Wall Street Journal poll, the breakdown of the 400,000 New Hampshire people who are independent and can vote either Democrat or Republican tomorrow, and they have made up their mind, shows that the most popular Republican, by an overwhelming margin among them, is John Kasich. He appeals to that likability, let's work together, let's grow the country, Ronald Reagan, sunny optimism. And so he can get the lion's share of the Republican independents and pull an upset. I don't think he has enough time, but he certainly is going to get a ticket to South Carolina. And, Charlie, the prediction I've been making, along with Rick Wilson, a superb political consultant, though some Trump people hate him, is that we're going to have an open convention in Cleveland. No one is going to have 1,237 delegates. The rules don't work to a majority this year. And so we're going to have the greatest political convention of my lifetime.
Is this somehow a wish over, over experience? You just wish it?
I'm not, because, they can't have a winner-take-all primary till March 15th. Means all sorts of delegates have to be divided up proportionally. Carly Fiorina got a delegate in Iowa, and so Carly Fiorina has a chip at that table in Cleveland. The more proportional results that come in, the harder it is, and the more scattered the field. And I think it's going to be a very bunched up second, third, fourth, fifth place tomorrow night. The more empowered a diversity of candidates are to carry on. Some people have talked about Chris Christie getting out if he gets under 5%. No, he won't. He's got a couple of hedge fund guys to buy super PAC ads. He's got some play in New Jersey and beyond. He'll pick up some votes in a place like Michigan on March the 8th, where he'll duel with John Kasich. He'll play very well there. I don't see anybody getting out.
How does it play out in your mind? Because independents in New Hampshire can vote in a Republican or a Democratic primary.
Well, since Hillary's getting killed by Bernie, your vote has more value in pure economic theory terms if you cast it on the Republican side. And so I think that more independents will vote for Republicans because they believe that Bernie Sanders is blowing Hillary Clinton out of the water. There's a Politico story tonight that Hillary's about to fire all of her staff.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's a sign of chaos. David Axelrod even tweeted that out, and he's applied to the Witness Protection Program now. I think that if you're an independent voter and you want emotional satisfaction, you vote Republican tomorrow.
Because you know you're contributing to what?
To a decisive moment. Whereas the decision is already in the minds of most observers on the Democratic side. Bernie's going to win. He's going to win by a lot. The Republican vote matters a lot because second, third, fourth, fifth. Ted Cruz in the WMUR poll, CNN poll tonight, was in third place. I was stunned by that because he got the lowest Iowa bump of anyone I've seen because of the Carson controversy. So maybe I'm wrong, but I still think Trump, Kasich, Rubio tomorrow in that order and with some decent separation.
And what about Ben Carson's support, especially among evangelicals?
I think that is fading. I like Dr. Carson a lot, a guest on my show often, and one of the nicest men in America. I was surprised that he got 10% in Iowa. I don't think he lost many votes, if any, because of that Ted Cruz announcement, although people can dispute that forever. I think that people have come to the conclusion that though he will make a wonderful Secretary of HHS or Surgeon General of the United States, that he is not a participant in the first or second tier, although he's going to soldier on as well because he's going to have some chips at the table in Cleveland.
Could he possibly endorse Marco Rubio?
I don't have any idea which way he would go.
Yeah, I say that only because I was surprised that Santorum endorsed, but I don't understand the nature of deals that could be made.
Santorum endorsed because Santorum was the most serious guy on Iran, and he believes Marco Rubio and his work on the Intelligence Committee makes him the most serious guy on Iran.
Yeah, but that's why a lot of people that you admire have great fault with Marco saying on the first day he's going to void the treaty with the nuclear deal.
Well, not me. I would void it, too. George Pataki came out today again and reiterated, as did Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, their support for Marco Rubio. I think there is a great divide in the country on the Iran deal, and I think it's playing out in front of us on the North Korea deal, which was signed in '94 by the first Clinton administration. It didn't work. We're trying, and they're just a crazy regime. The Iranians are crazy, fanatical end times regime. And so those of us who think the North Korea deal in '94 was a disaster take the Iran deal of 2015 and fast forward it 5 years, and it's a disaster.
Bob Gates had real qualms about the deal, but he said for Marco Rubio to say on his first day he would void the deal was a serious mistake.
I recognize you're right. He is one of the people with whom I disagree on this point, and I think it's a good thing to campaign on, if only for clarity in the minds of the American people between whoever the Republican nominee is. I want them saying that deal is dead, and Mrs. Clinton, who has said she will embrace and work with it. The former Secretary of State tries to have it both ways, arguing that she was, in fact, a proponent of sanctions, but now is a proponent of the deal.
So what's the basic divide in this election, you think, between Democrats and Republicans?
Foreign policy. It is, I think, going to be a foreign policy election. And there were news stories tonight out on ISIS planning attacks in 5 cities. The metastases that is underway with Islamist radicalism is of great concern to the foreign policy wing of the Republican Party, which actually brings together everybody, and does not seem to concern the full Sweden. I think I used that term last week with you.
Did.
Yeah, and Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders on with Chuck Todd yesterday said he would be consulting with J Street and Lawrence Korb, and my jaw dropped, and I thought,
mine too.
Yeah, I said, wow, and he's going to kill Hillary Clinton tomorrow.
Yeah, but then they go to South Carolina. Things will probably even up.
That youth gap, the Wall Street Journal.
It really is. I think that's the most fascinating thing in Democratic politics is the youth gap.
Yeah, I saw a grandmother.
And especially young women.
I saw a grandmother.
So that Albright is in New Hampshire saying, it's for you not to vote for her is, something next to terrible.
Burning in hell. I saw a grandmother and her granddaughter today, because I'm stuck in a hotel in Boston because of the snowstorm. I can't do my radio show. And so I OD'd on, I've got New Hampshire jitters. It's like drinking too much coffee. But a grandma and a granddaughter both saying they're voting for Bernie, even though the grandma had supported the former Secretary of State 8 years ago. The granddaughter, because she doesn't want $80,000 in college debt. In other words, she likes the Sanders appeal. And the grandmother, because she said in so many words, the server scandal will bring her down. The 22 SCI SAP classified emails will bring her down. So for very different reasons, grandma and granddaughter are for Bernie. And if Bernie Sanders comes out and says one thing, he will make Elizabeth Warren his vice president, he might turn South Carolina around.
Wow. I hadn't thought about that. I wondered where she was and what she was doing and how much she's sitting somewhere in Massachusetts saying, why didn't I do it?
Where good reporters would go find her, because she would be the nominee right now. But if Bernie Sanders comes out and says, let me introduce my running mate, it's game, set, match, it's a replay, or what Yogi Berra say, deja vu all over again for the Clintons.
Yes, it is. Michael Bloomberg said the following in this FT piece, that I find the level of discourse and discussion distressingly banal and an outrage and an insult to the voters. Now, you are one of these very smart, Harvard-educated lawyers. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, it's not been I don't like the 90-second rule in a debate, and I've done 2, and I have 2 more to do on February 25th, right. And I don't make the rules. I think it's very hard. Yours is the only show on television where a segment goes this long.
Yes, but they're scared of it, aren't they? I mean, most of them are scared of long-form conversations, or not?
I don't think so.
You think the candidates are prepared for it and, in fact, would prefer it?
Yes, because they all come on over at, I won't do the plug my website thing, but I have listed all 153 interviews, and I've transcribed them all. There are hours and hundreds of hours of Republican candidates asking questions they have no idea what I'm going to ask them about, and they will talk at length, and they try and steer it to their strength, obviously, Chris Christie is a very good courtroom lawyer, so he knows how to bring it back to surveillance of terrorism suspects and post 9/11. Yeah. Marco Rubio brings it to the Intelligence Committee. Ted Cruz will talk to you all day long about his 9 Supreme Court arguments, and he'll give you every minute of every one of those arguments if you give him a chance, because he has them memorized. Jeb Bush will tell you about reforming education in Florida, and it's fascinating. It's interesting. Ben tell you about running the neurological department at Johns Hopkins, and it's fascinating, it's interesting, but they get 3-minute time, here or there.
Yeah, I know. So let me ask you this about Marco and the debate, because however it's playing out in New Hampshire. Donald Trump was with me this morning on the CBS This Morning program, and he said, look, one time is interesting and understandable. The second time to evoke the same statement about Obama changing the country is okay. The third time is becoming questionable. Fourth and fifth says something about the person saying it.
Oh, well, okay, Donald Trump is right, but he's also a little bit wrong. Message discipline is the most important factor in a presidential campaign.
Until you look stupid.
Until you cross a line. And what Christie did was make him reset, because you can't give the second part of that punchline. President Obama did not fail because he's young. He failed because he's a leftist. That's the second part. If you keep getting interrupted. And the 90-second bell and Chris Christie worked it expertly. But here's the other untold story. Rubio got off the mat. He dominated the second half of the debate. And, in fact, Google searches on his pro-life stance, which, again, for Republican conservative primary voters matters a lot. His talk about what the 3 pillars of conservatism were scored off the charts. So I think we in the media have done tunnel vision on those 3 minutes. And I know the left loves those 3 minutes, and I know Hillary's people are trying to knock Rubio out of this because he is the one that scares them the most. And maybe he does have a glass jaw. We'll see. But it didn't look like it to me today and yesterday.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Charlie.
Back in a moment. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for stopping by my YouTube channel. Click right here to watch previous ones that you may not have seen, and click right here to subscribe to get all of them. And this is what you really need to do, is click right here to subscribe. Thanks for coming by. Don't miss a minute of any of the Hugh Hewitt YouTubes.